The Vorthak war fleet emerged from the void like a storm of blades, their silver, purple hulls glinting under the dim light of a dying star. The human colony on Epsilon 9 had no warning before the first kinetic lances struck, no time to raise shields, no chance to flee. The orbital defense platforms, primitive by Vorthak standards, shattered like glass beneath the onslaught. Commander Vorgul watched from the bridge of the dread Talon, his armored fingers tightening around the command rail. The holographic display painted the colony in harsh violet light, its structures crumbling under the relentless barrage. His secondary heart pulsed with satisfaction. This was not war. This was extermination. The humans had dared to settle in Vorthak, claim space, and now they would learn the price of their arrogance. Below, the colony burned. Gromnak, the fleet's chief scientist, observed the destruction with detached curiosity. His data, slate flickered with readings, thermal blooms, structural collapse vectors, the fading bio, signatures of the humans below. He had expected resistance, even vermin fought when cornered. Yet the humans did something unexpected. Amidst the flames, a single figure emerged from the wreckage, a human female, her uniform torn and scorched, dragging a wounded comrade behind her. Gromnak's ocular implants zoomed in, capturing the moment in perfect clarity. She was bleeding, her movements labored, yet she did not stop. She hauled the injured man into the skeletal remains of a bunker, shielding him with her own body as another plasma volley struck nearby. A waste of energy, Gromnak mused. The male was already beyond saving. The human female turned her face upward, toward the sky, toward the fleet that had doomed her world. There was no fear in her expression, only fury. Sergeant Adam McKay had been on perimeter patrol when the attack began. One moment, the colony was alive with the hum of generators and the chatter of settlers. The next, the sky split open and hell rained down. He had seen war before. He had fought pirates, insurgents, even rogue A-constructs. But this was different. The Vorthak didn't just kill, they erased. His code flickered, damaged but still functional. Thermal signatures flared and vanished. His squad, his friends, snuffed out in seconds. His rifle was in his hands. Before he consciously registered moving, his body operating on pure instinct. A child's scream cut through the chaos. McKay turned, his blood running cold. A Vorthak drop pod had landed near the colony's residential sector, its armored hatch already peeling open. The aliens moved with terrifying precision, their silver, purple armor reflecting the flames as they advanced. And there, in the middle of the street, a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6. McKay didn't think. He ran. Major Diana Ware had been in command for exactly 17 minutes when the first Vorthak boarding drones breached the command bunker. Her officers were dead. Comms were down. The colony's last transmission, a desperate plea for help, had been cut off mid-sentence. Now, standing amidst the ruins of her command center, she did the only thing left to her. She activated the failsafe. The console beeped once, a soft, almost apologetic sound. Then the screen flashed crimson, terminal protocol engaged. Somewhere beneath the colony, a reactor began to overload. Vorgul's satisfaction turned to unease as the wide dread Talon's sensors screamed a warning. The humans weren't just dying, they were fighting back. The Vorthak boarding drones moved through the ruined command bunker like liquid shadows, their silver-purple carapaces humming with predatory grace. They scuttled over fallen bulkheads, their sensor clusters pulsing as they hunted for survivors. Major Diana Ware remained still. She had counted 7 drones before the emergency lighting failed. Now, in the suffocating dark, she listened to the distant screams, to the rhythmic thrum of the colony's dying reactor, to the skittering of metal claws on durasteel. One of the drones paused, its violet optics flickered, scanning the wreckage where she crouched. Ware didn't breathe. The seconds stretched. Then, with a dismissive chirp, the drone moved on. She exhaled, her fingers tightened around the plasma pistol in her lap. 3 shots left, not enough to fight. Just enough to make sure they didn't take her alive. A tremor ran through the deck. The reactor's death throes were getting louder. She had minutes, maybe less, outside. In the burning streets, Sergeant Adam McKay dragged the little girl into the shattered husk of a transport pod. The child clung to him, her sobs muffled against his armor. He didn't speak, didn't reassure her. Words were useless now. Instead, he listened. The Vorthak were close. He could hear their war chants, a guttural, rhythmic clicking that set his teeth on edge. They moved in packs, their armored boots crunching over broken glass and corpses. McKay checked his rifle, half a charge. Not enough. Then he saw it, a flicker of movement in the smoke. A human silhouette. The figure was too tall, too still. Its armor was wrong. Sleek where human plating was angular. Its edges blurred as if it drank the light around it. A Vorthak hunter, and it was looking right at him. Aboard the Wadred Talon, Vorgul watched the colony burn. The humans had fought harder than expected. Their defenses had been crude, their tactics desperate, but they had bled his warriors for every meter of ground. Now, as the reactor's death scream built to a crescendo, something nagged at him. A whisper in the data feeds, a distortion in the scans. Gromnak, his chief scientist, hissed in alarm. Commander, the human ships. Vorgul turned. The void outside was empty. Then, without warning, space itself rippled. A shape emerged from the darkness, a warship, black as a knife's edge, its hull drinking the light around it. No energy signature, no drive flare, just silence, and then, across the void, its weapons charged. McKay didn't see the shot. One moment, the Vorthak hunter was there. The next, its torso was gone, vaporized by a hypersonic round that cracked the air like thunder. The little girl screamed. McKay whirled, scanning the rooftops. Then, on the edge of his helmet's display, a flicker, a single line of text, transmitted on a secured military band. Herunandi ifidi faron sol utio lehl kuf rme. Someone was out there, and they were hunting Baz back. The Vorthak hunter's body collapsed in a smoldering ruin, its silver-purple armor split open like overripe fruit. The air stank of ionized metal and charred flesh. McKay barely had time to process the kill before the little alien girl shrieked again, her violet eyes wide with terror, not at the corpse, but at him. He raised his hand slowly, pulse rifle slung low. His HUD flickered with warnings, thermal blooms in the distance, more Vorthak closing in. But the shot that had saved them, that had come from nowhere, no signature. No trail, just death, delivered with impossible precision. A whisper of static hissed in his earpiece. Sergeant, move. The voice was female, clipped, military. Not from his squad, not from any comms channel he knew. McKay didn't hesitate. He scooped up the alien child, her mother limp in his other arm, and sprinted for the nearest ruin. Behind him, the sky split open. Another hypersonic round tore through a second Vorthak scout, reducing it to molten slag before it could raise its weapon. The girl trembled against his chest, her tiny claws digging into his armor. He could feel her rapid, panicked breaths through the plating. Designate rally point Gamma, the voice said. You have 90 seconds. McKay cursed under his breath. Gamma was 3 clicks northeast, a collapsed transit hub, half buried in debris. No cover, no defensible position, just open ground and a killing field of Vorthak patrols. But whoever was speaking had just saved his life. Twice, high above, in the gutted remains of a shattered orbital defense platform, Major Diana Ware exhaled slowly, her finger resting on the trigger of the S-Material Lunar Class anti-material rifle. The weapon was a relic of the old wars, a brute force instrument designed to punch through starship plating. She had modified it, improved it, made it hers. The scope's display flickered with targeting data as she tracked McKay's desperate sprint across the ruins. Vorthak energy signatures pulsed on the edges of her sensors, closing in. She didn't flinch. Her second shot took the lead hunter through its cranial node, the round detonating mid, flight into a swarm of shrapnel that eviscerated the two behind it. Purple, black blood misted the air. Gromnak, watching from the safety of the Vorthak command ship, hissed in disbelief. What in the void was that? Vorgul's claws flexed against the armrest of his throne. The human sniper wasn't just killing his warriors. She was erasing them. No warning, no hesitation. Just cold, surgical annihilation. And she wasn't alone. McKay reached the rally point gasping, his muscles burning. The alien mother groaned in his arms, her breathing shallow. The child clung to him, her tiny body shaking. Then the shadows, figures emerged from the ruins, human, clad in armor so dark it seemed to swallow the light. No insignia, no unit markings. Just the faintest shimmer of active camouflage deactivating. The lead soldier stepped forward, her visor retracting to reveal sharp green eyes and a face that had seen too much war. "Major Ware sends her regards," she said, her voice flat. "Now hand them over." McKay tightened his grip instinctively. The soldier didn't blink. "That's an order, Sergeant." Behind her, the others raised their weapons not at him, but past him, at the approaching storm of Vorthak hunters. And for the first time since the attack began, McKay realized he wasn't the rescuer anymore. He was as being rescued. The air tasted of scorched metal and ionized plasma. McKay's grip on the alien mother tightened as the dark, armored soldiers moved past him, their weapons humming to life. Their armor wasn't just for stealth. It was reactive, shifting in texture to match the ruins around them. A living shadow swallowing the battlefield whole. The lead soldier, Ware's operative, didn't wait for McKay's response. She flicked a finger, and two of her squad peeled off, grabbing the wounded Vorthak mother and child with startling gentleness. Their movements were clinical, efficient. They had done this before. McKay's pulse hammered in his throat. Who the hell are these people? Then the Vorthak hunters arrived. A storm of silver, purple armor surged through the shattered colony streets, their energy blades casting jagged violet light across the rubble. They moved like predators, their scanners sweeping for prey, only to freeze as they registered the new threat. The human soldiers didn't flinch. The first Vorthak died before he could raise his weapon. A kinetic round punched through his chest, the impact so violent it sent his body skidding backward into his squad. The second hunter barely had time to trigger his shield before a plasma lance sheared through it, and him, in a single, molten strike. McKay had seen combat. He had fought on 3 worlds. But this was butchery. The dark, armored humans moved like ghosts, their weapons speaking in a language of perfect, calculated annihilation. They didn't waste shots, they didn't miss. Every trigger pull was a death sentence. And then the Vorthak did something McKay had never seen before. They retreated, not in panic, not in disarray, but in order. Their commanders barking sharp, guttural commands. They fell back, shields raised, their scanners frantically recalibrating. The lead human soldier watched them go, her expression unreadable. Then she turned to McKay, her voice a blade wrapped in silk. "Major Ware wants you alive. The Vorthak won't make that mistake twice." Behind her, the ruins trembled. Something was coming, something big, and McKay realized, with a cold, sinking dread, that this wasn't a rescue. It was a trap, and the Vorthak had just sprung it. The Vorthak warship, Claw of Dominion, burned in the void, its silver, purple hull cracked open like a dying star. Escape pods spat from its ruptured flanks, their emergency beacons flickering weakly against the black. Inside one such pod, Commander Vorgul's secondary heart stuttered. His claws trembled against the controls, his vision swimming with the afterimages of human railgun fire. The Claw had been one of the finest vessels in the Vorthak armada, a fortress of dark steel and violet energy cores, its weapon arrays capable of glassing entire continents. And yet, the humans had torn it apart in his minutes. A weak, pained sound drew his attention. His brood mate Kesha, lay curled against the pod's bulkhead, her carapace split open along the ribs, leaking etcher. Clutched to her chest was their hatchling, Vorthak, barely old enough to molt his first shell. The little one's bioluminescent markings flickered erratically, his tiny claws digging into his mother's armor. Vorgul's throat tightened. They were adrift, life support was failing, and the humans, those monsters, would surely hunt them down. Then, the pod's proximity alarm shrieked. A shadow eclipsed the stars outside the viewport. Vorgul's spines flared in instinctive terror. A human dropship. It hovered silently, its angular hull bristling with weapon mounts, its thrusters glowing a baleful red. For a long, agonizing moment, nothing happened. Then, the docking clamps engaged. The airlock hissed open. Vorgul bared his fangs, his claws flexing, ready to die fighting. But the figure that stepped through wasn't a soldier. It was a human medic, unarmored, unarmed. Her face was pale under the pod's emergency lights, her dark eyes scanning them with clinical precision. She didn't flinch at Vorgul's defensive stance. Didn't react to his growl, she just knelt beside Kesha. And Af helped. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, sealing Kesha's wounds with a portable cauterizer, administering a hypospray of something that made the hatchling's bioluminescence stabilize. Vorgul couldn't process it. This was Af human. One of the creatures who had just slaughtered his crew, who had turned the claw of Dominion into a funeral pyre. She was saving them. The medic glanced up, meeting his gaze. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. Your child will live. Vorgul's secondary heart clenched. In that moment, he understood something terrible. The humans weren't just warriors. They were as protectors. And if they could show mercy to their enemies, what kind of wrath would they unleash on those who harmed their own? Outside the pod, the void trembled. The Vorthak armada was coming. And the humans were waiting. The void beyond the escape pod shimmered with the telltale distortion of Vorthak warp signatures, dozens of them. The lusk claw of Dominion had been the spearhead, but now the full might of the Silver Armada bled into real space, their brutalist warships materializing like jagged teeth in the dark. Vorgul's secondary heart hammered against his ribs. He should have felt relief. Reinforcements meant survival. But the human medic, Diana Ware, her insignia read, didn't even look up. She simply finished stabilizing Kesha, then tapped a command into her wrist unit. A pulse of encrypted data flared across its surface. The response was immediate. Spaces rippled. At first, Vorgul thought it was another Vorthak vessel arriving. Then the distortion resolved into something far worse. A human warship. Not the blocky, utilitarian designs the Vorthak intelligence reports had described. Not the crude orbital platforms they'd mocked as metal hulks. This was a predator. Sleek as a blade, its armored hull drank in the starlight, reflecting nothing. Its prow bristled with weapon housings, not the Vorthak's harsh silver, purple energy projectors, but something darker, something hungry, and then it moved. No gradual acceleration, no warning flare of engines. One moment it hung in the void, silent. The next, it lanced forward, faster than any vessel of its mass should have been capable of. The Vorthak armada reacted too late. The human ship unfolded. Its weapon arrays deployed in a fluid, terrifying motion, like the spreading wings of some ancient raptor. Railgun batteries cycled with a soundless hum. Plasma conduits flared crimson along its flanks. And then, the lead Vorthak cruiser, the Herald of Retribution, died in a single shot. A projectile the size of a ground car punched through its shields like they weren't there, detonating deep within its reactor core. The explosion wasn't the clean, controlled burst of a breached warp drive. It was messy, violent. The ship didn't just break apart, it unmade itself, whole plates peeling back like flesh under a scalpel. Vorgul's breath caught. This wasn't warfare. This was butchery. The human ship didn't stop. It carved through the Vorthak formation, its weapons firing with impossible precision. Every shot found a weakness. Every impact maximized carnage. And then the transmission started. Vorthak distress signals flooded the comm channels, frantic and raw. Ships screamed as their crews were vented into the void. Commanders bellowed orders that dissolved into static. Through it all, Diana Ware remained kneeling beside Kesha, her expression unreadable. Vorgul finally found his voice. Why? She didn't answer at first. Then, softly, you attacked a colony full of children. Outside, another Vorthak cruiser died. This isn't revenge, she said. It's a lesson. The pod's external sensors flickered, catching the last moments of the Silver Armada. The human ship, Av Indomitable, its transponder declared, hovered amidst the wreckage, its weapons still humming with barely leashed fury. Vorgul understood. Then the humans hadn't just built weapons. They'd built vengeance. And now the Vorthak would learn the cost of provoking it. The void between stars was never truly silent. Vorgul knew this. He had spent decades listening to the hum of Vorthak engines, the crackle of silver, purple energy cores, the rhythmic pulse of warships breathing in the dark. But now, as the last echoes of battle faded, the silence was deafening. The human vessel, Second Indomitable, hung motionless amidst the wreckage of the Silver Armada, its armored hull glinting like a predator's teeth under the distant starlight. Scanners painted a grotesque panorama. Shattered warships, drifting debris, the occasional flicker of a dying escape pod. The Vorthak had come as conquerors. Now they were little more than ghosts. Inside the medical pod, the air was thick with the scent of antiseptic and blood. Kesha's breathing had steadied, her wounds sealed by human technology the Vorthak had dismissed as primitive mere hours ago. Diana Ware remained beside her, one hand resting lightly on the child's shoulder. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes, cold and sharp as tungsten, never left Vorgul. He wanted to rage, to demand answers, to claw back some semblance of dignity. But the weight of realization crushed him. This wasn't war, this was Eresher. A chime sounded from the pod's console. Gromnak, the scientist, flinched as if struck. His spined crest trembled as he parsed the incoming data. There? They're hailing us, he rasped. Vorgul's mandibles tightened. Put it through. The screen flickered to life. A human face filled the display. Sergeant Adam McKay, his features streaked with soot, his armor scorched from battle. Behind him, the bridge of the Indomitable loomed, a cathedral of war bristling with weapon stations and tactical readouts. His voice was calm, almost conversational. You're still alive. Good. Vorgul's claws dug into the console. You slaughtered us. McKay didn't blink. You slaughtered first. A pause. Then the feed split, revealing another image, a Vorthak transport, its hull breached, its engines dead. Life signs flickered weakly inside. A mother and her broodlings, curled together in the wreckage. This is the Dawn's mercy, McKay said. Found her drifting near the colony's outer debris ring, crews mostly gone, but these ones. They're breathing. Vorgul's breath hitched. The humans had every reason to leave them to die. Every reason to exact vengeance in blood. Instead, the screen showed a human medic, kneeling beside the Vorthak mother, pressing a hydration pack into her trembling claws. We're bringing them aboard, yes, McKay said. Figured you'd want to know. The transmission cut. Silence returned, heavier than before. Diana Ware finally spoke, her voice quiet. That's the message. Vorgul understood. The humans weren't just monsters, they were judges. And mercy, it seemed, was just another weapon in their arsenal. The silence in the Vorthak command bunker was thick, suffocating. Vorgul's claws flexed against the steel of the tactical table, the metal groaning under the pressure. His secondary eyelids flicked shut for a moment, shielding his gaze from the harsh glow of the holoscreens. The humans had saved them, not just any Vorthak, a mother. Broodlings, the most sacred bond in their warrior culture. To leave them to die would have been expected. To slaughter them outright, justified, but to rescue them. It made no sense. Gromnok's neural tendrils pulsed erratically, his normally precise calculations shattered. They are preserving our weak. His voice was a rasp, disbelief warring with something darker, fear. This is not strategy. This is madness. Vorgul finished, his mandibles twitched. Or is it? The humans had shown their teeth. Their warships had torn through Vorthak defenses like paper. Their weapons systems defying every known principle of war. But this was something else, a cruelty wrapped in mercy. A blade hidden in an open palm. Vorgul turned to the holoscreen, replaying the transmission. The human medic's hands were steady as they worked, gloved fingers adjusting the IV line, feeding into the Vorthak mother's carapace. The broodlings, small, fragile things, were curled against her, their bioluminescence dim with exhaustion. One of them stirred, clicking weakly at the human. The medic paused, then with deliberate slowness, they removed their helmet. A female, dark-skinned, her eyes sharp but not unkind. She reached into a pouch at her belt and withdrew something, a ration bar. She broke off a piece, holding it out. The broodling hesitated, then, with a trembling claw, it took the offering. Vorgul's chest tightened. This was not the act of a conqueror. This was the act of a protector. And that was far more terrifying. Because if the humans could if they could look upon their enemies and see something worth saving, then what did that make the Vorthak, who had slaughtered human colonies without hesitation? Gromnok's tendrils coiled inward, his voice barely audible. They are showing us our own reflection. Vorgul exhaled, the weight of understanding settling over him like a shroud. The humans were not just warriors, they were judges. And in their mercy, they had passed sentence. The Vorthak had attacked a species that could have annihilated them. Instead, they had been forgiven, and that was a wound no weapon could inflict. Outside, the distant hum of human engines grew louder. The hunt had turned. The Vorthak command spire on Xalthar Prime had been designed to withstand orbital bombardment. Its obsidian, black alloy walls absorbed energy blasts. Its redundant shield generators hummed with silver, purple defiance, and its war sages had calculated every possible angle of assault. They had not calculated this. High Commander Draxic's talons scraped against the hololithic display as the reports flooded in, not from the front lines, but from the core worlds. The human counterstrike had bypassed their fleets entirely, slipping past their picket ships like shadows through a net. And now, they were here. The first transmission had come from the mining colony on Vexus 9. Grainy, flickering footage of human drop pods screaming through the atmosphere, their heat signatures masked by some unholy blend of stealth tech and raw velocity. Then, silence. The second came from the agricultural hub on Zorkath. A single, shuddering image, a human armored suit, its matte, black plating scarred from re-entry, standing amidst the ruins of a Vorthak defensive battery. The soldier wasn't firing, wasn't advancing, just watching. Draxic's secondary heart spasmed. This wasn't an invasion, it was a demonstration. His tactical officer, Krelth, hissed through slit nostrils. They're not targeting military installations. They're hitting as infrastructure, fusion reactors, water purification nodes, comm relays. A third alert blared. The orbital shipyards over Xalthar Prime had just gone dark. No explosion, no debris, just gone. Draxic's mind raced. The humans had studied them, not just their tactics, but their society. The Vorthak were a warrior culture, yes, but their strength came from the unbreakable chain of supply and industry that fed their war machine. And the humans had just severed every link. A fourth transmission. This one from the brood nurseries on the southern continent. The feed showed human soldiers moving through the vaulted halls, their weapons lowered. One of them, a female, her face obscured by a visor, knelt beside a trembling broodling, offering a ration bar. The same gesture Vorgul had witnessed, the same mercy. Krelth's voice was hollow. They could have glassed the nursery from orbit. Instead, they're feeding them. Draxic's claws flexed. This was worse than annihilation. Annihilation was clean. Honorable. This was a surgical strike against the very idea of the Vorthak as conquerors. The humans weren't just proving they could win. They were proving they could choose not to. And in that choice, they had exposed the Vorthak's greatest weakness. They had never considered what it meant to be spared. Outside the spire, the sky flickered. Not with weapons fire. With human dropships descending like silent, patient storms. The sky above the Vorthak command spire burned silver-purple, the last remnants of their orbital defenses flickering like dying embers. The human dropships descended in eerie silence, their blackened hulls swallowing the light, their thrusters barely a whisper against the howl of the wind. They moved with predatory grace, circling like vultures, not in haste, but with the cold certainty of a predator that knew its prey could not escape. Vorgul stood at the shattered viewport, his claws digging into the fractured alloy frame. The air smelled of ionized metal and scorched flesh. His secondary heart pulsed erratically, a drumbeat of dread. He had seen human mercy, he had tasted it, that bitter, incomprehensible act of restraint. And now, he would see their wrath. The first dropship touched down in the ruins of the plaza, its ramp hissing open. Shadows emerged, not the lumbering war machines the Vorthak had expected, but soldiers, clad in matte, black armor, their visors reflecting the dying light. They moved with a precision that made his spines prickle. No wasted motion, no hesitation. One of them, taller than the rest, the sigil of a crimson spear etched into their pauldron, stepped forward. The humans called them sergeants. This one's weapon remained lowered, but the threat was implicit. The Vorthak warriors still standing tensed, their weapons humming to life, their instincts screaming for battle. A broodling, it staggered from the rubble, its carapace cracked, its limbs trembling. One of the young, left behind in the evacuation. The Vorthak soldiers froze. Protocol demanded they prioritize the defense of the spire. But the broodling was theirs, a future warrior. A life owed protection. The human sergeant didn't hesitate. They knelt, a gesture Vorgul had seen before. A gesture that Osbernde, the human, removed their helmet. Scarred. Human. Sergeant Adam McKay. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His hands moved slowly, deliberately, as he unclipped a medkit from his belt. The broodling flinched, its instincts recoiling from the alien touch. But the human didn't force contact. He simply placed the kit on the ground and slid it forward. An offering. The Vorthak warriors watched, their weapons still raised, their minds reeling. This was not how war was waged. This was not how fuzz victors behaved. A voice, crackling through the comms. All units, stand down. Major Diana Ware. She emerged from the second dropship, her armor unmarked, her stride unhurried. She didn't carry a weapon, she didn't need to. The weight of her presence was enough. Her gaze locked onto Vorgul. "You're beaten," she said. Vorgul's claws flexed. He could order the attack. He could die fighting, but the broodling was still there, watching, learning. And the humans, they had already won. Not by destroying them, by showing them another way. The sky above darkened as more dropships descended. The storm had broken, and the Vorthak had no shelter left. The dropships descended like silent predators, their engines humming with restrained power. The air smelled of scorched earth and ionized metal. The aftermath of a battle that had ended not in annihilation, but in something far more unsettling, for as mercy. Vorgul stood motionless, his claws twitching at his sides. His warriors remained frozen, their weapons still raised but their resolve crumbling. The broodling, his broodling, clung to its mother, its wide violet eyes locked onto the human who had offered aid. Major Diana Ware stepped forward, her boots crunching over broken debris. She didn't wear the triumphant sneer of a conqueror. Her expression was unreadable, a mask of tempered steel. Vorgul's mind churned. This was not how war ended. The Vorthaks knew war, knew the taste of victory, the sting of defeat. But this was something else. Behind where, the human soldiers moved with eerie precision, securing the perimeter without firing a single shot. Their discipline was absolute, their confidence unshaken. They had won without slaughter, and that terrified Vorgul more than any massacre. Gromnak, the scientist, staggered forward, his armored plating cracked from the earlier bombardment. His voice was a rasp over the comms. They could have killed us all. Vorgul didn't answer. He didn't need to. The truth was written in the wreckage around them. The humans had chosen not to. Sergeant McKay knelt beside the injured Vorthak female, his medkit open. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, applying biogel to her wounds. The broodling watched, its instincts warring between fear and fascination. A low, resonant hum from above, Vorgul's head snapped upward. The sky split open as a new vessel descended, dwarfing even the dropships. Its hull was sleek, black as void, etched with silver sigils that pulsed with restrained energy. A human capital ship, the Indomitable. Weir didn't flinch. She simply turned her gaze back to Vorgul. "You attacked our colony," she said, her voice calm. "You expected us to respond in kind." Vorgul's mandibles tightened. But that's not how this ends. The Indomitable's ventral bay opened, revealing rows of dormant war machines, mechs, drones. Enough firepower to glass the planet. Yet none of them activated, none of them moved. We could destroy you. But we won't." The broodling let out a soft chirp, its tiny claws reaching out, not toward its own kind, but toward McKay. The human didn't hesitate. He placed a single ration bar in its grasp. The gesture was small, insignificant. Yet it shattered something inside Vorgul. The Vorthak had come to teach humanity fear. Instead, humanity had taught them shame. The storm wasn't over. It had only just begun. The silence in the ruined Vorthak command bunker was thicker than the smoke still curling from shattered consoles. The human warship Indomitable loomed in the sky, its shadow stretching across the battlefield like a blade held at the throat of a defeated enemy. Vorgul's carapace ached where the shrapnel had torn through. His blood, thick and violet, seeping between the plates of his armor. His broodling clutched the human ration bar in trembling claws, its tiny mandibles working at the unfamiliar texture. The scent of it, sweet, artificial, Valian, filled the air between them. McKay hadn't moved. The human soldier stood with his rifle slung, his visor retracted, revealing eyes that held no triumph. Only exhaustion, only pity. Vorgul's mind fractured under the weight of it. The Vorthak had waged war across 100 systems. They had broken empires, shattered fleets, reduced worlds to ash. They had done so with pride, with the unshakable certainty that their brutality was righteous. That fear was the only language lesser species understood. This human had spared his broodling, not out of weakness, not out of fear, but because it was the only choice. A low hum vibrated through the ruins as the Indomitable's ventral bay sealed shut, its arsenal still dormant. Major Weir stepped forward, her boots crunching over broken shards of Vorthak alloy. She didn't speak, she didn't need to. The message was clear. We could have killed you all. War we chose not to. Gromnak, the scientist, staggered to his feet, his neural tendrils flickering with erratic pulses of silver, purple energy. His scanners had been active throughout the battle, recording every pulse of human weaponry, every flicker of their shields. Now, the data streamed across his display, and what he saw made his secondary heart stutter. The humans hadn't just matched Vorthak technology. They had surpassed it. Their armor adapted. Their weapons learned. Their ships moved with a precision that defied physics, as if the void itself bent to their will. And yet, they had stopped. They had shown mercy. Gromnak's mandibles parted in something between awe and horror. This wasn't just a military defeat, it was a philosophical one. The Vorthak had believed themselves the apex of war, but humanity had mastered something far more terrifying. Restraint. The broodling chirped again, its tiny claws reaching toward McKay. The human knelt, his armored fingers gentle, as he adjusted the makeshift bandage around the youngling's wounded carapace. Vorgul watched, and for the first time in his life, he felt the crushing weight of a shame. The storm wasn't over, but it had changed. And so had they. The void between stars was never silent. Vorthak Commander Vorgul knew this better than most. His claws flexed against the command throne's armrests, the dark steel alloy groaning under his grip. The odd Dreadfang, his flagship, hung in the debris, strewn aftermath of battle, its silver, purple energy cores pulsing like a wounded beast's heartbeat. The scent of scorched metal and ionized plasma clung to the air, thick enough to taste. Outside the viewport, the wreckage of his fleet drifted, twisted husks of Vorthak warships, their brutalist designs shattered by weapons they had never anticipated. Human weapons. His secondary heart thudded hard against his ribs. The tactical display flickered before him, replaying the engagement in cold, clinical detail. The humans had not fought like any species the Vorthak had ever crushed beneath their talons. They had not formed orderly battle lines or relied on overwhelming firepower. They had adapted. Their ships moved like living things, weaving through barrages with impossible grace, their armor shifting mid-combat to absorb and redirect energy blasts. Their railguns fired not in predictable salvos, but in staccato bursts that surgically dismantled Vorthak shields. And when the odd Dreadfang had launched its final, desperate strike, the humans had let them live. A low growl built in Vorgul's throat. Mercy was a weakness, a flaw. The Vorthak Dominion had risen to power by purging such concepts from their warriors. Yet here, in the ashes of his fleet's pride, that same mercy coiled around him like a noose. High Commander Gromnak, his chief scientist, approached, his violet, accented carapace dull with exhaustion. The data slate in his claws trembled slightly. The Brood ship. It was hit during the retreat. Vorgul's spine stiffened. The Brood ship carried younglings, future warriors of the Dominion. Its loss was unthinkable. Status, he demanded. Life signs detected. But the hull is compromised. If we do not retrieve them before the radiation breaches the inner chambers. Vorgul didn't wait for the rest. He turned toward the viewport, where the crippled Brood ship listed among the debris, its once imposing silhouette now a broken shadow. Then he saw it, a human dropship. Small, unmarked. Its matte, black hole swallowing the starlight. It moved with predatory silence, slipping between the wreckage like a specter. Vorgul's claws unsheathed fully. They had come to finish the job. The dropship extended a docking umbilical, latching onto the Brood ship's ruined airlock. Vorgul's blood ran cold. He had seen what human soldiers did to Vorthak younglings in the propaganda reels, how they butchered without hesitation. Arm the ventral cannons, he snarled. Target that ship, Gromnak's voice cut through. Sharp with something Vorgul had never heard from him before. Commander, look. The feed from the Brood ship's surviving internal sensors flickered to life. A human, not in full combat armor, but in a lightweight enviro suit, knelt beside a wounded youngling. Its carapace was cracked, violet hemolymph seeping from the fractures. The human's hands moved with impossible gentleness, applying a sealant patch to the injury. Another human stood guard, their weapon raised not at the younglings, but at the shadows beyond, as if expecting an attack. Vorgul's breath stalled in his lungs. This was not an execution. It was of rescue. The broodling chirped weakly, its tiny claws grasping at the human's wrist. The soldier, Voss Sergeant, his insignia read, did not pull away. Instead, he adjusted the youngling's makeshift sling, securing it against his chestplate as he turned to evacuate. Vorgul's claws retracted. The storm of battle had passed. But the storm inside him had only just begun. The Brood ship's corridors were silent now, save for the distant hum of failing systems and the occasional groan of stressed metal. Vorgul stood motionless, his neural interface still flickering with the feed from the internal sensors. The image of the human cradling the wounded youngling burned behind his eyes. Impossible. The Vorthak did not spare the weak. The weak were cold, left behind to die if they could not keep pace. It was the way of the swarm, the unbreakable law of survival. Yet here, in the wreckage of their defeat, the humans had done what no Vorthak warrior would ever consider. They had stopped. They had turned back. For the young, a low, shuddering breath escaped Vorgul's vents. His mandibles flexed, the instinctive click of aggression dying before it could fully form. The data feeds continued to stream, more humans moving through the ship, securing corridors, dragging the wounded from collapsed sections. Not executing, not slaughtering, his tactical display pulsed with alerts. The remaining Vorthak forces were in disarray, their command structure shattered. Some brood ships had already broken formation, fleeing into the void. Others lay dead in space, their cores dark. And yet the humans were not pursuing. No boarding torpedoes streaked toward the retreating vessels. No final, vengeful salvos rained down to ensure total annihilation. They had won, and then they had stopped. Vorgul's claws twitched. His neural feed flickered again, another image. A human medic, this one in full armor, kneeling beside a wounded Vorthak warrior. The warrior's carapace was split open, his limbs mangled. Even from the grainy feed, Vorgul could see the slow, labored pulse of his secondary heart. The human's hands moved with precision, injecting something into the wound. A stabilizer. A toxin. The warrior's breathing steadied. Medication. There's Vorgul's entire body locked in place. This was not the behavior of conquerors. This was not the way of predators. This was something else, something as worse. Because if the humans were not the monsters the swarm had believed them to be, then what did that make him? The weight of that thought settled into his thorax like a blade. Outside, the void stretched endlessly, cold and indifferent. But inside Vorgul's mind, the war was only beginning.